So I'm going to call to order the
Recording in progress.
calling to order the City of West Sacramento regular meeting. I guess this is actually a special meeting of the Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission on August 2nd, 2021. Do we do a roll call? Do a roll call. I'll go in order. Commissioner Therical.
Present.
Commissioner Cianez. Hearing none. Commissioner Johnston.
Here.
Commissioner Lichtenstein.
Present.
Commissioner Cash-Cooley has informed us that will not be attending. Commissioner Gunn.
Present.
And Commissioner Hastings. Present. Okay. Calling to order. Pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order N-29-20, members of the West Sacramento Transportation, Mobility, Infrastructure Commission and staff will participate in this meeting via teleconference. To reduce the spread of COVID-19, members of the public are asked to watch the meeting via Wave Cable Channel 20 and to submit comments in writing by 5 p.m. on August 2nd, 2021. That's today. To submit a comment in writing, please email Benjamin M. at cityofwestsacramento.org and write public comment in the subject line. In the body of the email, include the item number and or title of the item as well as your comment. All comments received by 5 p.m. will be provided to the Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission and posted on the website. The comments submitted shall become part of the record of the meeting. Make verbal comment during the meeting. Join the meeting using the Zoom meeting link or the phone number listed below on the agenda. The chair will request public comment during item 1A prior to the first item on consent and after the staff presentation for any other item on the agenda. Once the chair has announced the public comment period, if you would like to make a comment, please do the following. 1, if you're joining the meeting via Zoom, press the raise a hand button. Or 2, if you are joining the meeting via phone, press *9. When it is your turn to comment, the chair or the clerk will call you by name or phone number and city staff will unmute your microphone. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Once your public comment has ended, you will be muted again, in case anyone's on the line. So we will begin General Administration Function Part 1, Section A, presentation by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the Commission. Commission Clerk, are there any presentations by the public?
There was no written comment, nor do we have anybody on the line for comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to Section B, closure of ex parte communications. Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commissioners shall disclose any communications they have had on the agenda items at this time. Are there any Commissioner communications to disclose? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Consideration of approval of the minutes of the May 24th, 2021 Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
Commissioner Hastings, motion to approve, and Commissioner, I think that was Gunn. Who's the second? Is that correct?
Matters yet.
Or was it Commissioner Therical? I'm sorry, I wasn't sure who it was. It was Commissioner Therical who seconded. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the minutes are approved. Moving on to the regular agenda. Consideration of a presentation on the alternatives, analysis, preliminary engineering, and draft environmental impact report / environmental assessment, PREA, for the Broadway Bridge. I believe we're just supposed to receive a presentation. Are there any other, are we supposed to approve it, or what is the request here? Just receive it?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, the purpose of this is this presentation and the staff report that you received is to inform the Commission on the public release of the draft EIREA, Environmental Impact Report, Environmental Assessment, and to provide the Commission with an opportunity to review the documents through the links that were provided, and to submit any comments that you have at this time to staff. We are just asking for receipt of the presentation because there is no action on this item. It will be returning to the City Council for final approval of the environmental documents after all public comments have been received.
Okay, thank you very much.
We do have a PowerPoint presentation. If it would please the commission, I would like to go ahead and go through it.
Be pleasing.
All right. Commission Clerk, if you could put that up, I would appreciate it. Okay, so again, this is a presentation on the Broadway Bridge Draft Environmental Impact Report, Environmental Assessment. For clarification, the Environmental Impact Report is part of the California Environmental Quality Act, where the environmental assessment is part of the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. Next slide, please. So again, the key objectives of this presentation are to present the background on the Broadway Bridge, which was provided to you in the agenda report, to provide some information on the alignment alternatives analysis that was conducted as part of the project, and the preliminary engineering that was completed, as well as a background on the community participation. We also like to receive commission feedback on the recommended locally preferred alignment, that's alignment B, and the environmental documentation provided. Next slide. So there were several milestones that were accomplished well before this environmental document was put out on the street, as they say, or released to the public. First, there was the Sacramento Riverfront Master Plan. This is the master plan that looked on both sides of the Sacramento River, both in Sacramento and in West Sacramento along the waterfront. That Riverfront Master Plan actually was the initial document that identified the need for additional river crossings to improve connectivity between both cities beyond what was already existing, and that would be the I Street Bridge, the historic I Street Bridge, and the historic Tower Bridge, the gold bridge that you cross between Sacramento to Tower Bridge Gateway in West Sacramento. As a follow-up to that, there was the Sacramento River Crossings Alternative Study back in 2011. Some of you might recall that I have presented this before. I believe Chair Zimmer, you were present. We talked about these alternative crossings in relationship to the feasibility study that was conducted for Broadway Bridge and for the I Street Bridge. So this Sacramento River Crossings Alternative Study identified 8 potential bridge crossings to serve what were identified as the North, the Central, and the South market areas. Easiest way to remember is the North market area would be north of the I Street Bridge. The center goes from the existing I Street Bridge to Pioneer Bridge, which is US 50. And then south of US 50 is the South market area. The city councils of both cities accepted that river crossings alternative study and directed staff to examine both the North Market and South Market crossing alternatives. One of those alternatives was eliminated from further consideration, and this comes up often. The Sutterville Road crossing, which would have linked Lake Washington Boulevard over to the Sutterville Road intersection at I-5. That crossing was eliminated primarily due to congestion impacts going through West Sacramento, induced congestion on I-5, and the potential for cut-through freight traffic using Lake Washington Boulevard to go to the port. Next slide. So this is an example of those different crossings, those 8 different crossings that were identified. The ones that we're going to focus on today, or we are focusing on today, include number 2, which is the location of the I Street Bridge Replacement Project, and then number 6, which is the location of Broadway Bridge. This was identified as a neighborhood-friendly bridge. Both of these were intended to be serving local users, primarily for not for regional travel, but for local travel. They were crossings that were not to connect primarily to residential streets and be bicycle and pedestrian friendly. Next slide, please. Again, this is the identification of neighborhood friendly bridge concept. It was actually adopted by the city of Sacramento as a policy in 2011. It was never formally adopted by the city of West Sacramento, but West Sacramento has accepted Sacramento's neighborhood friendly bridge definition and integrated it into the goals for all of our local bridge crossings. Next slide, please. We also had some funding awards that were received. SACOG's Regional Funding Program Award in 2013 provided the 442,700. In addition to the local match for that, we had approximately $500,000 in funding in order to prepare the feasibility study for Broadway Bridge. In addition to that, we received $1.5 million in federal funding from the Tiger 6 discretionary grant program. Some of you may now know it as BUILD. It has since been changed once again. It is now identified as RAVE. So these are discretionary grants for capital improvements. We matched that 1.5 million with a 1.5 million contribution, $750,000 from each city in order to secure that funding. Next, we had the Pioneer Bluff Transition Plan, which was completed in 2014, where we looked at the riverfront property along South River Road. This was a project led by our Economic Development Department, looking to change the industrial land uses that are currently existing in the Pioneer Bluff area to transit-oriented urban infill. Next slide, please. So there's the feasibility study phase that I had mentioned. We looked at a range of alternatives in that feasibility study. We also had some pretty robust community outreach, gathered a lot of stakeholder feedback, and looked at the scope, schedule, and cost associated with the Broadway Bridge. The current phase that we're in right now is a project approval and environmental document phase. So that takes the feasibility study phase a step further. We do some more in-depth analyses on each of those alternatives that were put forward in the feasibility study. Those were then narrowed down based on their environmental impact or potential environmental impact, various costs, and regulatory environment, including U.S. Coast Guard approval. And from there, we're going to be hopefully moving into PS&E, the plan specifications and estimates. That phase is unfunded. It is also known as the final design phase, where we take the engineering design that was from the approved environmental document, that would be the locally approved alignment, and we do the final engineering and specifications on that, and then ultimately move into construction. The estimated cost of PS&E is $10 million. We are currently working to try to secure that funding. Construction, we have not identified funding. At that time, it was estimated around $238 million for the construction phase. Next slide, please. So these are the alignments that were analyzed from the feasibility study through the early stages of the environmental impact report. You can see we have alignments A through D. However, the C alignment was looked at in 3 different configurations. There were 2 separate configurations that were brought forward in the feasibility study. The 3rd configuration came forward as a refinement to those 2 alternatives in order to avoid items like the Kinder Morgan pipeline, which is a gas pipeline that's located underneath the river. We also worked with the U.S. Coast Guard to ensure that the required navigational opening of 170 feet is adhered to. That actually started to expand when you start looking at the C3 alignment and the D alignment, where that 170 foot needs to continue to widen in order to accommodate the river traffic. Next slide, please. So there are several bridge types that were evaluated in the feasibility study and then evaluated further in the engineer's report for the environmental document. The important thing to remember here is that with either the B alignment or the C alignment, and I'll get into why the A and Ds were eliminated, the vertical lift, the double leaf bascule type, and the swing bridge are all appropriate bridges that fall within the limits for the 170-foot span. The vertical lift, the 170 feet, considerations for that are best for light rail. We are making each one of these bridges, both the I Street Bridge Replacement Project and Broadway Bridge Project, accessible to light rail in the future. The double leaf bascule has some limitations when it comes to the rail locking in the center when you bring a bridge down. However, there are special locks that can be utilized. The 170-foot width for a double leaf bascule is right at the end of the range. So it becomes more expensive as you start to go outside of the range for some of these bridge type alternatives. And then there's the swing bridge, as many of you know, as our current I Street Bridge. That would also be feasible. However, there are some cost considerations when looking at implementation. All of these different bridge types would be evaluated in the final design phase as we move forward. Next slide. Back when the feasibility study was put together and adopted, there were several design features that were looked at. We looked at the cross-section of this bridge in the same way that we looked at the cross-section for the I Street Bridge Replacement Project, and these were identical as far as the approved cross-section. This is a 2-lane configuration with a center turn median. It also includes dual separated 12-foot multi-use pathways on the outside of the vehicle traffic way. There are 6-foot bike lanes with 3-foot vehicle buffer zones. Those buffer zones are provided to provide a low stress environment for bicycle riders to cross the bridge. There's also 12-foot lanes that are rail and transit ready. So in other words, as I had mentioned, they'll be designed to accommodate buses, potential BRT, as well as rail. And again, there's multiple bridge types that were evaluated as part of the span. One of the items that came up several times as a comment from folks is, well, how are these buffers going to be designed? And how are you going to accommodate pedestrians as well as other modes like scooters and bike share? All of this is not part of the final design phase. So elements such as whether or not there would be a raised buffer, a hardscape buffer, a curb, or delineators, all of these things will be ironed out as we get into the final design phase. Next slide, please. One thing that's pretty important to folks is ensuring that our bicycle and pedestrian paths are low stress and that we would accommodate traffic going underneath this bridge crossing so that there would be continuous use of the bicycle and pedestrian trail along the waterfronts on both sides of the river. And as this slide shows, we are going to be accommodating just that. Next slide, please. There was a lot of questions that have come up over the years on traffic volumes. So from the feasibility study all the way into where we are at right now, we have analyzed traffic and primarily looked at what traffic does from Broadway into West Sacramento, because with these key alternatives, traffic can either flow onto both South River Road and 15th Street, or dead end into South River Road, which is also 5th Street, by the way, once you head north. So one of the things to take into consideration is that there are greater traffic impacts associated with dead ending directly into South River Road, as opposed to providing dual arterial outlet vis-a-vis Jefferson Boulevard and South River Road. So we have found several times. We've already done traffic analyses twice for this project, both with the feasibility study and again, when we developed the road network for Pioneer Bluff. Each time we have seen that the traffic impact is significantly lessened when we have a direct 15th Street to Jefferson Boulevard connection. Next slide, please. I had mentioned the road network in Pioneer Bluff. We had not, as part of the feasibility study, ironed out what the roads will actually look like in Pioneer Bluff. And it was actually not part of the Broadway Bridge project to analyze that. So the city of West Sacramento's Economic Development Department, as well as our own transportation group, worked together to devise how the road network would be laid out and what the alternatives could possibly be. Those were put together in different conceptual layouts and presented to the city council in early 2018. The city council looked, I believe it was about 4 different alternatives. They evaluated each one and then selected the preferred alternative for the road network within Pioneer Bluff. Then the Broadway Bridge team took that road network that was approved by the city council and dropped it into our regional traffic model to determine what the impacts would be with each of these alignments. And then based on that, the analysis was included in the environmental document, and then the impacts were identified and listed. Some of the things that we see with the traffic analysis and the future road network as shown here is that alignments A, B, and D had a less than significant impact. However, alignment C, which as I mentioned before, dead ends into South River Road, would result in excessive delay, creating a significant impact. The other thing to note here is that the daily vehicle miles traveled was actually reduced with all alignments, as the majority of the traffic that is using Broadway Bridge are looking to travel between downtown core and Southport in West Sacramento. Right now, folks have to use Pioneer Bridge, which is the freeway, the state highway system, in order to get over the Sacramento River, or extend further north to use Tower Bridge, or even further north to use the I Street Bridge. Since, as I had mentioned, a lot of the traffic will be traveling between downtown and Southport, the sooner you actually have a connection going across the Sacramento River, the more reduction in vehicle miles traveled that you see. Next slide, please. So alignments considered but eliminated are identified in the environmental document. Alignment A, which was the northernmost alignment closest to US 50, the Pioneer Bridge, had several impacts. You can see that it went from 15th Street across the Cemex property and across the river and through the Chevron refinery. This actually conflicted with a lot of our planned development in both Pioneer Bluff, the Bridge District, and also was inconsistent with the West Broadway specific plan. It also required a realignment of the existing railroad crossing on Broadway in Sacramento, and a change in the elevation of about 1,000 feet of those tracks, which is a significant impact and a significant cost implication. Next slide, please. Alternative alignment D was considered and eliminated because it actually would result in the volume of traffic going to Circle Street in West Sacramento. And as folks know, Circle Street is a local residential roadway. It is not an arterial. It would conflict with the neighborhood-friendly bridge policy. It also required that Circle Street be signalized intersection and actually widened to accommodate traffic turning movements. Again, this is not consistent with the neighborhood-friendly bridge policy. It also had the longest span length, which was about 35% longer than alignment B, 28% longer than alignment C. And in addition, the US Coast Guard identified that this was not an alignment that they would find acceptable, even though it did fall within the limits that were initially mentioned. The skew of the alignment was determined to be too significant for river users to navigate through. Next slide, please. The result of our analysis came down to two alignments. One is the alternative B, which is the locally preferred alignment, and alternative C, which is refined from our other C alignments. As I did mention, though, the C alignment does result in a significant impact in traffic, whereas alternative B does not. Next slide, please. This is the preliminary engineering that was put together for the alignment B and is available in the environmental document. Next slide. This is alternative alignment C that is also in the environmental document and was analyzed. Next slide, please. The recommended preferred alignment was identified by both the cities of West Sacramento and Sacramento and is subject to public review, as we're in right now, and comment, and ultimately city council approval. The alternative B satisfies the objectives of the project better than C in that it requires fewer changes to the mobility network, results in greater future congestion relief, causes a lesser amount of permanent and temporary impacts on both sensitive terrestrial and aquatic habitats, produces significantly less VMT than alignment C in year 2040 as well. Next slide, please. Bridge architectural design came up pretty often at our most recent public meeting. As I had mentioned, actual design elements will be subject to evaluation based on community feedback, functional requirements, cost effectiveness, and funding availability, and will be analyzed in the final design phase of the project. So these different design elements that are not part of this current phase are the selected bridge type, whether it's going to be bascule, vertical lift, is it a swing bridge, is it a rolling double leaf bascule? The mechanical and structural elements, what is the girder type? Are we talking about steel girder? Are we talking about concrete? Is it an arch bridge? The pedestrian and bicyclist amenities, so benches where they're going to be located, bike parking, belvederes, which are lookouts, the railing design, landscape, hardscape design, public art, wayfinding, bike buffer design, all of these different elements will be addressed in the final design phase of the project following community feedback and discussion on the architecture for the bridge itself. Next phase, or next slide, please. There are a number of related projects that were taken into consideration for this project, and we have had ongoing coordination throughout. The Riverfront Street Extension is a project that would connect ultimately 5th Street with Riverfront Street through the CEMEX property. That is an ongoing project as part of our engineering division. The Broadway Complete Streets Plan, which is looking at traffic calming and pedestrian amenities and designing for bicycles and pedestrians along Broadway, is an ongoing Sacramento project. The West Broadway Specific Plan was just approved by the city of Sacramento, which is the entire area, including the marina and Upper Land Park area, all the way to where the Broadway Complete Streets Plan ends. And that, I believe, was approved about 3 months ago and had an environmental impact report as well. I had mentioned the Pioneer Bluff and Stonelock reuse plan and the ongoing specific plan where we have the entire street grid network that was approved by the city council and has been moved into well, I think it's still moving into the specific plan phase. The Riverwalk Trail extension, we continue to look for opportunities to extend the Riverwalk Trail south all the way to the Deepwater Channel. The rail relocation project looks to remove the industrial uses of the railroad and our tanker vehicles that are rolling stock for the trains for Union Pacific that are sitting in the Bridge District, ultimately looking to remove any of the industrial rail operations to the other side west of the port. The light rail extension, also known as streetcar, was taken into consideration as potential use of the existing tracks along Jefferson could in fact be used for light rail extension in the future. Miller Park and Marina redevelopment project in Sacramento was also described and introduced in some of our outreach. And the Shell property acquisition, where different bridge alternatives were landing, is actually an ongoing project of the Port of West Sacramento. Next slide, please. We've had some community participation, a lot of robust discussion and outreach amongst community members. We started back in 2015 with a community open house as part of the work we were doing with the feasibility study. We had an environmental scoping meeting back in July 2017. We had more than 70 community members attending that in the city of Sacramento. And by the way, we've been trading off between the city of Sacramento and the city of West Sacramento to enable folks who cannot make it over the river to be able to attend in either city. Next slide, please. We had a very robust outreach event, some of you may have attended, called the Riverfront Renaissance Community Outreach Event in June of 2017. At this event, we actually took the courtyard site over off of South River Road, put up a very large tent, and had staff from both cities attending with over 235 community members there. We had community leaders from both cities, and we introduced a number of projects happening in both cities, all the way from the I Street Bridge Replacement Project south to include the Broadway Complete Streets, Broadway Bridge, Miller Park Marina, as well as some of the other work that was going on in Sacramento at the time. And we've had a number of city council and commission meetings that have been held to talk about the project, and I've got them listed here. Next slide, please. The one we just held, July 28th, was the virtual public open house on this topic that you're hearing today. That's the release of the EIREA and the opening of the public comment period. The public comment period started on July 7th and extends all the way through August 23rd, 2021. All comments should be sent my way. So they can either be mailed, which everything must be received by 4 p.m. on August 23rd, 2021, or you can email me directly with your comment at mccoyj@cityofwestsacramento.org. Next slide, please. Here we've got the web page for the environmental documents. If you go to the city's website and you go to our capital projects and transportation page, you can find the Broadway Bridge projects, and there all the environmental documents have been uploaded. You can also go to YouTube to see the open house presentation that I just described that occurred on July 28th. We've got the entire recording of that virtual open house, and all the documentation, as I say, could be found online, either at the City of Sacramento or the City of West Sacramento, and the physical documents are also available if you would like to go read hard copies on the second floor at City Hall in West Sacramento. Next slide, please. A little note about the cost. I had mentioned that we received a Tiger grant from FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, for $1.5 million. The cities matched those local funds with $750,000 from each city for a total of $3 million for this effort that you see here. We have expended the entirety of the federal Tiger funds, which was a goal that we had by the end of June, so we have met that. And at this point, we have funding programmed but not allocated for $10 million for the PS&E phase, and as I'd mentioned, $238 million for construction. The current projected total cost of the locally preferred alternative, Alignment B, is $277 million. To put that in context, the I Street Bridge Replacement Project that we have received full funding for is a $230 million project at this time. The reason why this is an extended cost is because we're looking at a 2035 construction date. And the reason why that's extended out, I can get into more detail on the next slide. So as I mentioned, we are right now in the PAED phase, which is the project report phase, as shown here. In order to proceed with the subsequent phases, we have to, one, certify our environmental document. And once we have that environmental document and our preliminary engineering certified, then we can start seeking additional funds for the plan specifications and estimates phase, right-of-way acquisition, and construction. I have been working with Congresswoman Matsui's staff to try to identify funding for the final design phase. We were very successful in, with her leadership and the leadership of our city council and that of Sacramento City Council, in obtaining $15 million in the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development authorization bill that's currently in Congress right now, and we hope it will be signed by President Biden. That would be $15 million for the I Street Bridge replacement project, and I believe if we are still within that bill, we have $4.15 million that's allocated to the I Street Bridge deck conversion project. That's the project to convert the top deck of the historic bridge to a bicycle and pedestrian facility once the new bridge is built. We had been working to try to secure additional funding for the final design, but unfortunately it did not make it through the bill. So we will continue to seek other funding. Other options include pursuing grant funding through SACOG, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, through their regional program. They have something called the transformative category, which allows for higher dollar requests authorized over a number of years. And so if we could apply for the $10 million in 2022 for the 2023 fiscal year, then in 2 years, we would have that completed and we would be ready for the next phase actually early. I'm anticipating that we may or may not be successful in that round, and we'd be looking more at the 2026 where we could get that authorization. We will just continue to do our best to try to secure that funding. But I've provided a conservative estimate of what we believe is feasible for our schedule, and that identifies a 2035 construction. Next slide, please. So the next steps, as I mentioned, we had our Broadway Bridge virtual open house that was completed. Right now, you are receiving at the TMI Commission our report. We will be going to the West Sacramento City Council for their presentation. And by the way, I have to apologize because your staff report did say council a couple of times at the beginning when it should have said commission. I noticed that when I went back through and reread it. Both these reports were developed together, and you'll be hearing City Council will be hearing the same presentation that you're receiving today. After we've closed the public comment period on August 23rd, our staff is going to work with our consultant team, and we're going to respond to all the comments that were received. That is going to be compiled into what will be published as the final environmental impact report, environmental assessment. And then we'll be going to the City Council to seek final approvals and certification of the environmental document. Next slide, please. That concludes the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Silly question. Thanks for the presentation. It was great. It's all the details I wanted. Does it normally take 18 years to build a bridge?
Yes. For a bridge of this size and a bridge of this scale and a bridge of this cost, they definitely require an extended period of time in order to do the planning and the approvals, the engineering, and ultimately construction. To put it in context, the I Street Bridge, it started about the same time. We are just entering into the final design phase. we, as I said, are hoping to secure the $15 million through the federal appropriation, the THUD bill. That will give us sufficient funding to move through both the final design and the property acquisition phase. There is some property acquisition and relocations that are required as part of that project. So if this was going, let's say, fast, and we suddenly had a majority of this funding available, then the final design phase takes about 2 years, about 18 months for the right-of-way process, and about 3 years for construction. However, before you can move forward with any of that, you must secure the funding. That required both cities to develop cooperative agreements, to take multi-year efforts to seek and gather and get appropriated all the funding that was required. So for the I-3 Bridge Replacement Project, we have funding that was secured through, I think, about 6 different sources. And this, I think the one coming up is going to be the 7th source. And then once we get all our local funds together, the Highway Bridge Program through the Federal Highway Administration has to authorize us to move forward, as well as Caltrans authorizing us to move forward into each phase. To do that, though, we have to show we've got the money, we've got the engineering, and the environmental approvals, and we're prepared to move forward. It's the same thing with this project. We're following the same playbook.
Okay. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, it's my first time building a bridge, so curious.
Are there additional questions? Commissioner Johnston?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jason, for that very thorough presentation. I do have quite a bit of questions, so please bear with me. So this is a pretty significant cost. What are our ongoing liabilities after the bridge is complete? And what is the cost breakdown between the cities? And obviously, who's responsible?
We just had a number of discussions between the city of Sacramento and ourselves with regard to what are we doing with our long-term operations and maintenance for all of our bridges together. There's Tower Bridge is currently owned and maintained by Caltrans. Caltrans has been asking us for a number of years to take over that bridge. However, before the cities will do that, there needs to be funding source for that secured. And at this time, there hasn't been any discussion that's moving us in that direction. The I-Street Bridge is currently owned and maintained by Union Pacific Railroad, originally constructed for Southern Pacific and then changed hands. And once the company went through their acquisitions, et cetera, over the centuries. So currently, right now, the cities do not maintain any of the bridges. So one of the strategies that's being looked at right now is formation of a joint powers authority. That JPA, which right now you may know we have the Riverfront JPA, which is joint powers authority that regulates the streetcar project and how the funding gets funneled through ultimately SAC-RT to get that project constructed. We can either expand the scope of the Riverfront JPA, which the reason why we called it Riverfront JPA is so that we can do that. The other alternative is to move forward with just standard cooperative agreements between the cities on how we're going to maintain the bridge. That's kind of how we did it with the upper deck of the Union Pacific Railroad Bridge, the historic I-Street Bridge. Both cities maintain a long-term access agreement over that top deck, and both cities maintain the top deck. It's just split between the two. So the most logical way to move forward with this is with the Joint Powers Authority, and that's something that we're pursuing right now.
Okay, so follow up to that. So it sounds like there's no ongoing funding source available after the bridge is built, if it is passed. So what is our liability? I mean, what programs are going to be cut and what services will be removed from the city of West Sacramento?
Well, I'm not a city council member, so I couldn't tell you that.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's part of the discussion, and I could definitely phrase that in my own public comment. You didn't really mention, you mentioned a little bit about SAC-RT and the light rail extension. Just recently, there was a lot of opposition to even just the extension. So again, what are our obligations to have RT be extended into West Sacramento further than it is currently in discussion and or construction right now?
Well, as it stands, the
Is it like dead
opposition,
set?
I want to break that down a little bit. The opposition to the light rail, from what I'm seeing from the board, is primarily coming from cities like Folsom, Elk Grove, Citrus Heights, smaller cities that don't necessarily want to see the competition, but are currently benefiting from light rail in their own city. I have not heard any public comment on opposition to the light rail, and right now it is supported by both city councils in both cities. It's also a project of the Sacramento Regional Transit District, so that project is now within their purview, but with support from both cities and from SACOG.
So I remember it differently, and we could agree to disagree on the public opposition to the SAC-RT extension. But will that be open to public comment from our city specifically? Should this bridge be constructed and light rail perhaps be a part of this new bridge?
I think when the bridge is being designed, I think Federal Highway Administration might have some objection, as well as some members of the city, to building in obsolescence on this bridge to make it so that it's not able to have light rail. But I think when it comes time for design, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for public input.
Okay, thank you. And two more questions, if you don't mind. So pedestrian safety, you kind of mentioned that. I do have concerns that the current pedestrian safety within West Sacramento is not being maintained. So how is the city of West Sacramento going to absorb new pedestrian options, either under the bridge or over the bridge, whatever the case is?
Through the design. So as I mentioned, we have underpasses that are being designed into the project, and growth from both cities is happening. It's mandated that the cities provide enough housing for residents in each city. So growth is going to be occurring, and we have to accommodate pedestrians no matter what. I guess I'm unclear on what your question is. How are we going to absorb pedestrians? We must build the infrastructure.
No, I understand that the infrastructure is there, but it's not being maintained. We have stop signs that are, that we have crosswalk signs that are behind light poles. We have striping that is completely disappeared from bike lanes. There's stop sign letters that are not on roadways anymore. So basic maintenance for pedestrian safety is not happening in West Sacramento. So now we add another layer of areas that we have to maintain for pedestrian safety. I'm worried about how much direction we're pulling our staff in.
Well, I think my goal is to make the bridge pedestrian oriented instead of removing pedestrians from the bridge. So I think it's better to have pedestrian oriented bridges so that bicycles and pedestrians can cross the bridge, as opposed to making a vehicle only bridge, which I don't believe will meet the goals of the neighborhood friendly bridge policy, let alone the requirements of accommodating multimodal travel over the bridge.
That wasn't my point, but thank you for saying that. Again, I'm just saying, if you're going to maintain more pedestrian safety, that's an obligation on behalf of the city staff, and more workload for doing so. So I want to make sure that pedestrian safety in all areas of West Sacramento there's a continued commitment to that. So again, with more workload comes needs that need to be met. And I'm just not seeing the current needs without a bridge being met. So that's an area of concern. Lastly, something that you didn't mention was resurfacing of streets. With increased traffic, there's going to be more wear and tear on our roadways, and West Sacramento hasn't been resurfaced or roadways in a very long time. And I still haven't seen a plan for when resurfacing of our current streets will take place. So how is, again, the basic infrastructure of our current roadways be maintained with this whole new obligation of the bridge, should it be approved?
Oh, as it does with the current general fund, it would be up to the city council to appropriate enough funding to do the maintenance.
Okay, so that's a different discussion. Okay, thank you. That's it for my question.
Commissioner Lichtenstein.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy, for the presentation. So much information packed in, so I want to try and just remember my questions. First, the point that my fellow Commissioner Johnston, made. Anecdotally, I have placed multiple complaints to Caltrans about Tower Bridge pedestrian safety. So I appreciate her comment and can relate, and it's a longstanding issue there, but obviously outside the purview of West Sacramento. So I just had a quick clarifying question around the engineering plans of preferred alternative. I wanted to make sure I understood this correctly. So the bridge will connect through to 15th and not South River Road. It'll go over South River Road. Is that correct?
This is the preferred, it's right now the recommended preferred alternative.
Okay.
Both alternatives are currently put forward in the environmental document for public comment and review. There could be a choice of the two cities. This has to be something that's agreed and certified by both cities. Right now, the locally preferred alternative that the cities have so far, this would be staff and our bosses have agreed to a locally preferred alignment B. However, this is subject to city council approval, and there's different possible things that could occur. One is the city council could choose, after reviewing public comment and the final EIR, to choose the alternative that has greater impact, greater traffic impacts, and in which case there would have to be an adoption of findings that greater impact also is accompanied by greater good or greater benefit for that alignment. Or the city could choose to go with the B alignment and still adopt findings. Right now, there is one impact there that is significant and unavoidable, and that impact is construction noise. I believe with the C alignment, once you go into that, you now are dealing with greater impacts that are significant and unavoidable, including traffic. So these things need to be considered by the leadership, and it will be up to our leadership to decide on what alignment they feel is the best. And then once that is certified by the city of West Sacramento, it goes to our responsible agency, and that is the city of Sacramento. So under our agreement for this project, West Sacramento is the lead, and they are the responsible agency. It is flipped with the I Street Bridge Replacement Project. Sacramento is the lead, and we are the responsible. We have already adopted the environmental document for the I Street Bridge, so it's following the exact same measure. So I cannot tell you that we have predetermined any alignment, except that we do have a recommended locally preferred alignment fee.
Understood. No, I appreciate the clarification. I think my question was more along just making sure I understood of the recommended location. It is connecting to 15th. And I asked because, well, I guess first to your point about the significant impact, I think from my perspective, construction noise is temporary and traffic impacts are, ongoing. So obviously want the preferred alternative that will reduce traffic and reduce VMT to the greatest extent possible. My question had to do with, just as somebody who has ridden her bicycle and walked along South River Road and 15th, trying to understand the access points for pedestrians and cyclists, knowing that it's going to be a focus of the bridge. So wanting to make sure that if the main West Sacramento connection is via 15th, that we build in the surrounding infrastructure to make 15th itself accessible to bicycles and pedestrians, because otherwise it's sort of a bridge to nowhere for pedestrians if you can't actually get there on your bicycle safely. But it sounds like that is currently the preferred option, and that there will not be any connection from South River Road. So those who are coming from, for example, the River District will have to get up to 15th and access that way. Is that correct? If they're on a bike
No.
or walking, or will there be access as well from South River Road for them?
The benefit of the alignment B is that it provides direct access both to South River Road and to Jefferson vis-a-vis 15th Street. With the alignment C, the bridge dead ends into South River Road. If you are, let's just say, coming across the river west, you will turn right from the bridge, travel something like 1,500 feet to get into a left-hand turn lane, turn left onto 15th, and then turn left onto Jefferson to continue down into Southport. The alternative is to, from South River Road, just turn left onto South River, or from the bridge, turn left onto South River Road, and then continue down to Village Parkway. The problem with that is that if you were to just direct all of that traffic to go down that direction, it does have an impact on the approved infrastructure within Pioneer Bluff. You do have a majority of the traffic then taking that one route instead of being essentially split between Jefferson and South River Road. Unfortunately, it has a greater impact on bicycle and pedestrian travel. You have more cars going down one way, and that area in Pioneer Bluff is, in the future, is to be designed as a walkable urban mixed-use neighborhood. It is, in our eyes, undesirable to have a majority of traffic traveling through that kind of environment.
Understood. So I think my question was more, if you're traveling west on the bridge and you want to go north into the city, what are your options? Do you have to go via 15th and then right on Jefferson, or will there be an access point directly to South River Road or a bike trail if it's extended?
No, you'll have to turn right. If you're just dead ending on the C alignment, you'll have to make a right and either take 5th Street to head into the Bridge District, or turn right onto South River Road, left onto 15th, right onto Jefferson. So you can see with this many turns and conflicts, it becomes more of a traffic impact for the C alignment.
Got it. No, I'm talking about the B alignment. So
Oh.
for the B alignment, if you're
B
traveling
alignment,
west,
just go right across, turn right onto Jefferson. Or
so
turn,
you're on Jefferson, you won't be able to go to South River Road directly. You'll have to.
no, you can go to South River Road.
Okay.
In fact, I recommend definitely on the environmental impact report, you can see the different engineering options, and you'll see that there's more intersections with the B alignment than there is with the C.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Commissioner Gunn.
All right, thank you for the presentation, Mr. McCoy. Just kind of add on to Commissioner Leichenstein's comment. So when the preferred alignment, where it intersects South River Road or 5th Street, are there any plans to upgrade sidewalks? Because currently south of 15th Street, there's no sidewalks for pedestrians to walk. The bike lanes are just kind of there. Are there any enhancements to at least kind of extend that south of ways?
Yes, you'll see that throughout the engineering design, the preliminary engineering design. Within the environmental document, there's sidewalk improvements, bike lane improvements, all associated with the bridge. There's also future improvements that are happening with the Pioneer Bluff area. And on 5th Street, we're currently working on a project to put in on between 15th Street and Mill, sidewalk and bike lane there.
And that'll be on the east side of the roadway, right?
East side of which roadway?
East side of 5th Street, going underneath, under US 50, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then second question is related to the right-of-way. How much of the property along the preferred alignment does the city own, and how much is it owned by private landowners?
The Shell property is, as I mentioned, is currently under acquisition from the Port of West Sacramento. It's not the city of Sacramento, but that property is currently under contract, I believe. Then, of course, there's a parcel that's right adjacent to that that's owned by the city of West Sacramento. There are some properties on the west side of South River Road that are private property, that a portion or some of the right-of-way would have to be acquired.
So I didn't see a right-of-way cost. Is that is that included in the construction cost, or is that yet to be determined?
That's yet to be determined.
Okay. All right. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Spherical.
Hello. So I don't necessarily questions, probably just comments. I was looking at the air quality report, and I guess it was a lot of this was very heavy. So I'm trying to follow along. So please correct me if I'm getting anything or misinterpreting any information. But I saw that there, under the CO analysis, that essentially there was no need to do any research or data impact on CO2, essentially because there was it didn't meet the requirement or something like that.
I'm
sorry,
not aware of that. We did a greenhouse gas emissions analysis and an air quality analysis within the environmental impact report.
Let me go to the specific section as what I mean, because I don't want to seem like I'm talking about. Sorry about this. Just it's a lot of pages that I have to go through. I just had it here. And now I am.
For something as specific as certain analyses with air quality, if you would like to submit that comment to me in writing, I can forward that on to our environmental consultant that did the air quality analysis and find out specific information for you.
Okay, I'll probably do that. But then to go along with it, I saw a map of air quality monitors in the area, and it seemed like only 2 were indicated on the map, and they were both in Sacramento, and none were in West Sacramento.
If there are no monitors for air quality registering whether we're in attainment or non-attainment in West Sacramento, then they would be using the closest monitors, which may happen to be in Sacramento.
I think my concern was that, I mean, the bridge would be very close to where I live, and being that I am in a low-income area, one of the things that has always been on my mind is air quality for this area, because we are in the intersection of not just local travel in and out of West Sacramento, but regional travel. And then also to have such a heavy presence of trucking in the area. It seemed like maybe I didn't read all of it, but it didn't seem like there was enough attention drawn to that portion of the area. And I wanted to know if we can look into that a little bit more, or possibly be part of the plan to put a monitor in the area.
So that's not something that we would do. It'd be the Air Quality Management District that would make that determination. That's not a local jurisdiction call. With regard to air quality, the analysis looks at what is the build out of the general plan in West Sacramento and the build out in West Sacramento and associated plans for each of the cities. That traffic is there regardless of where you put that bridge. So Liberty, Yarborough, these major development projects, River Park in Southport that are looking to move forward, that traffic will either go down Jefferson and have to use Tower Bridge or Pioneer Bridge or I Street Bridge, or that traffic will have an option to use Broadway Bridge, I Street Bridge, Tower Bridge. So this is not looked at as this bridge will generate cars. The cars are there. It's a determination of where are they going to go. And that's how the traffic analysis and the air quality analysis looks at whether or not there's going to be an impact. This bridge actually reduces the amount of vehicle miles traveled, which means it reduces the amount that people have to drive in order to get from destination A to destination B based on the regional model. That regional model is the approved model where land uses are plugged in, mathematical calculations look at what is the probability of a vehicle traveling from point A to point B. So the way it's currently, folks will have to drive from Southport, They'll be going down Jefferson or Village Parkway to South River Road, and they'll be getting to the closest destination is the freeway. So what you will see is congestion building up at 5th Street and into South River Road at 15th and along Jefferson. So the alternative, the no-build alternative, is described in the environmental impact report and what those conditions are going to be if we don't build this bridge. Then we analyze looking at what happens if we do build this bridge and what are the different impacts associated with each alignment. This bridge is not creating the emissions associated with cars. This bridge is actually trying to figure out how to deal with the traffic that's generated and how do we accommodate the amount of development that's planned in West Sacramento and allow folks to get across the bridge from areas that they're living to areas that they're working. So that is the only response I can provide for you, is that I would recommend looking at the no build alternative and the build alternatives and look at the impacts associated with that. If the no build alternative has the lesser impact, it describes that. But it also assumes that the development is not changing. So, you know, you live River Park, Yarborough, and Liberty, which are, you know, are somewhere around 1,300, 1,500 units per development, are currently on the books and planned. I'm sure a lot of you know where each of these developments are. Major infrastructure projects like Enterprise Bridge, like Broadway Bridge, like I Street Bridge, is not putting cars on the road. It's just finding a way to accommodate the amount of planned development in the general plan that we know is crossing the bridge downtown and back. And yes, there's maintenance associated with that the cities are going to have to work together to try to find a way to make happen, or stop development, which is really difficult because people continue to have children. And I don't think that that's a popular notion to tell people to stop having children.
Sadly, it's not.
Thank you. No, that clears it up a lot, so I appreciate those comments.
No problem.
Are there additional comments by the commissioners?
No, I was just going to say that, you know, I said no, and then I'm going to go ahead and make a comment. So it's on me. I'm really excited by all the opportunities for bike ped crossings along the river. I think the cities are going to grow. They're required to grow. Forget telling people to stop having children. We have a housing affordability crisis, and we need infill housing now. So finding ways for folks to travel in ways that are healthy for them as individuals, that are healthy for the community, and that are healthy for the planet are all good things. So I look forward to this entering the design phase, and we can really see how to make this accessible for folks walking, biking, and taking transit. And I'm excited that these will be built to potentially accommodate future light rail, knowing that that's not a guarantee, that's not even the conversation now, but the potential will be there. So just wanting to kind of end on a positive note there.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional comments by any of the commissioners? Okay, I just wanted to say thank you to McCoy for your presentation and answering all of these questions. And I actually also wanted to say thank you to my fellow commissioners for a very interesting and robust conversation about some of the potential, you know, concerns around this bridge and around the city as a whole. I really appreciate your insights. I've actually learned something tonight, so I appreciate everyone's comments. You know, I think there are concerns about maintenance of infrastructure in the city. I also agree with Commissioner Lichtenstein that if we can get people out of cars and onto bikes and walking more, then, you know, it's easier to maintain a sidewalk than it is to maintain a road. You know, cars and trucks create pretty large impacts on infrastructure. So I think those are both heard. Air quality, there is a section in the EIR. We were not given the EIR, but I think we can download that about air quality. And there is actually a table in our full packet toward the end on page S23 that gives a quick synopsis of the air quality concerns. It doesn't break it down by neighborhood, so that might be something worth thinking about if we're concerned about neighborhoods that are near that bridge. And I appreciate Mr. McCoy's patience in responding to all of that. I think, yeah, there are a lot of developments that are underway, and that is going to increase traffic impact of all sorts. So, thank you very much, everyone, and also Commissioner Gannon, Mr. Hastain, thank you for your comments as well.
If I could throw out there, Madam Chair, we did not provide the hard copies because, of course, it's like 1,000 pages. But if you open in PDF any of the specific EIR sections, you can run a word search and actually look for any key words that you're interested in, and then run through like that. And a lot of times it's just easier to find those key things that you're looking for. Air quality, attainment, those would be in the air quality section. Community, there's the community development section. There's everything that you could possibly need answers for is in there. And I want to remind everybody to please send me an email for any questions that you've got or any comments that you have. And all of those will be addressed in the final environmental impact report, and they will all be published. So it's very important that we get everything in before August 23rd. So those who are watching or will be watching this recorded session, please send comments to mccoyj@cityofwestsacramento.org. I'm answering what I can now. Majority, because I am receiving quite a few, are going to be answered later on as I get time to sit down with our consultant team to address those things that I can't answer off the top of my head right now. There's a lot of data that's in there specifically to traffic and how many vehicles are at this intersection during this time of day. That sort of thing I can't think of at the top of my head, that we'll have to sit down and actually comb through the environmental impact report in order to answer everyone that has sent questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any final comments? Okay. Well, with that, I think that agenda item is finished.
Oh, our new community development director is here.
Oh.
Hi there.
Would you like to introduce yourself and say hi to the commission?
Yes, thank you very much, Jason. Hi, Chair Zimmer and members of the commission. I'm Andrea Aus. Today is day one in my role as the new Director of Community Development. So sorry, I was a little late and glitchy, still trying to work out some of the IT new laptop thing. So I wasn't able to hear the entirety of Jason's presentation, but it's recorded. So I will take a look at that later. Thank you all for your service and for your robust questions and comments. Really appreciate it. And I'm very thankful that I'm here and look forward to a long tenure with the City of West Sac. So thank you all, and thank you, Jason, for your introduction.
Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome. All right.
Yeah, there's no motion required on this, so just please send me your comments, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to General Administration Function Part 3. Section A, Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission calendar. The next regular meeting of the Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission is scheduled for September 13th, 2021. Section B, reports from city staff. Mr. McCoy, are there any reports from city staff?
I had a couple of items that we had previously scheduled for the commission that I was hoping would be available for this upcoming meeting. That would be the Downtown Riverfront Streetcar Project. We did work with Sacramento Regional Transit to submit a RAISE grant application. You may recall RAISE used to be Tiger, then it was billed, now it's called RAISE. The grant is for securing low floor light rail vehicles or rolling stock for Sacramento Regional Transit. Of those, 2 vehicles would be reserved specifically for the connection into West Sacramento. So we're hoping to hear some good news about that in the next couple of months. The I Street Bridge replacement project, as well as the I Street Bridge deck conversion for active transportation project. We are currently working on cooperative agreements with the city of Sacramento to move into the final design phase for both of those projects. We have delayed a little bit on that while we talk more about formation of the JPA and maintenance responsibilities between the city. But I'm hoping to bring both of these projects to the commission as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Okay, agenda section C. Future agenda item requests by the Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission. Commissioners, are there any requests? I see Commissioner Lichtenstein has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I know we received a presentation on the Mobility Action Plan, and that is a key component of the city's forthcoming climate action plan. But I was wondering if we were going to receive ever a more dedicated presentation to the climate action plan overall, and when that might be.
I can check in with David Tilley on that and see what the current schedule is for that. And then if I can't, I think that is a Planning Commission item. But we could also do a presentation. It just depends on when that presentation will be. But I'll double check, and I can send an email to the commission letting you know what that schedule is.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know other commissions outside of planning have received, they may have been informational only presentations on the CAP, but would appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Therical.
I don't know if this is necessarily needed to be an agenda item, but it's more of, I guess, a question. Is there a how-to video on how to use the WestSat Connect app?
There's not, to my knowledge. I can look.
Worked on it, possibly something that we could, as a commission, work on or something. I've used it. I think it's really handy, but I feel like maybe it's not. There are people that just don't know how to use it still. So if there's a video we can do instead of just kind of a link to the app or website, but there's a small little how-to video, interactive video where you can guide how to file a report for any kind of infrastructure or pothole needs.
I can send that request to the city manager's office and specifically to our media and outreach group in order to determine whether or not something was ever put together about that. And I can email that along with the information on the schedule for the climate action plan.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other agenda item requests? Okay, hearing none, we'll get to section D, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Hastings. Second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gunn. And with that, this meeting is concluded and we will adjourn. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.